Hello, everyone. Today I will be analyzing the speech Farewell as a Socialist by Kate Richards O'Hare. And I will be breaking down this analysis, observing her rhetorical choices. My thesis is I am analyzing her 1919 farewell speech, Kate Richards O'Hare's speech, where she uses ethos, pathos, and logos to defend political dissent, which I will get into later on in this presentation. She also redefines the meaning of true American patriotism, which isn't, she notes it's not the blind obedience, but it's the courage to speak out for justice. And then this ultimately challenges wartime censorship and the criminalization of free speech, which is pretty much the basis of this speech, which we will get into. So, who was Kate Richards O'Hare? She was born in rural Kansas to a working class family. She was influenced by their socialist perspectives and aligned morally with the beliefs that socialists held. So, believing that people should have access to fair labor and fair conditions. She was a labor organizer, so she advocated for those fair working conditions and unionization of workers. She was a women's rights advocate, so she was a woman who created a wonderful home life for her family. She had 4 children and also ran for Congress in 1910. She was a writer and an editor. So she definitely was a trailblazer at her time, for her time, and still considered today to be a trailblazer for reform and progress. So the context of her speech, farewell as a socialist, farewell as a socialist, is it's being given right before she's about to be imprisoned. So she's saying farewell for the time being. And this speech that I'm analyzing today is that speech. So a little bit of context, background of the time. So World War I began and the US enters in 1917. The Espionage Act targets dissent and the rising tension over the draft. So Kate Richards O'Hare was a prominent speaker and writer opposing the draft, stating that mothers who sit by and allow this draft to happen and their sons to go to war and ultimately perish is just signing up for just the complete release of any chance going forward as a society. So she said, if you believe that you can just sit here passively to something completely wrong, that's a problem. And dissent here, so the Espionage Act targets dissent. So dissent is a public disagreement for something that's especially supported by most people or people in authority. So in this case, Kate Richards O'Hare was penalized for opposing authority. So she spoke out against the draft for World War I. She was targeted under the Espionage Act and ultimately sent to prison, which then she gave this speech, Farewell as a Socialist, and continues her progress in class reform or justice and reform. So, a speech excerpt from her farewell as a socialist that I found very powerful is as stated, and this was collected from the source Speaking While Female. It is not my fate or the fate of my children that I tremble for. It is the fate of my country. It is not a prison cell that I dread, but blind, insane, unintelligently directed revolution. It is not the nightmare of gray stone walls that fills my dreams, but the picture of gutters of our cities running red with blood of our people. So, needless to say, she was very passionate and used this passion to help create conversation amongst society and then ultimately have that society then push for change and better livelihood for the American people. So some of the rhetorical strategies that Kate Richards O'Hare used was, as I stated in my thesis, she used ethos, pathos, and logos. So breaking that down, ethos is also known as your credibility. So she was a working mother. She had a moral voice. So what does this mean? She not only was a mother, but she was a laborer. She wrote and continued to be a calm, well researched hub of information. Moving on to pathos, this is addressing emotion. So she was offered justice. And in this speech, she talked about how she was going to be spending time away from her children, which resonated deeply with a lot of people at the time. Ultimately, the same people that began to resonate with her anti-war speech, realizing that it's actually okay to want better for your family and not have them be blindly sent into dangerous conditions, whether that be at the front lines of war or laboring in terrible working conditions. And then she also addresses logos with log. So this is also logic. The war benefits the rich and it kills the poor. She was known for saying this over and over again. And this simple logic is what you can really see begin to progress this movement forward. The tone was emotional and direct. So it was also effective, which is important to note. And then in conclusion, she was known for her moral resistance. So she was known for her rhetoric, which led to moral resistance. So summarizing what we spoke about today, we talked about pathos and ethos, pathos, and logos, and how each of these approaches helped to influence that public opinion that she was hoping for through her writing and speeches. Kate Richards O'Hare left a legacy. She left one of courage, truth, and free speech. So she spoke out against a tyranny in the government. She wasn't afraid to speak out against that tyranny. And even when she was prosecuted for speaking out against that tyranny, she still remained confident. And one thing that I found very interesting in my research was there's an archive of the letters that she wrote while in prison. So she gave this speech saying, I'm not going to be fearful, for my future or the future of my kids, but what I'm going to be fearful for is the future of the American people if they can't see what's going on and organize efficiently to produce helpful change for the American people, aligning themselves with the Constitution and their rights. So those letters can be found at the State Historical Society of Missouri. And if you're interested, at the end of this, I do have a link where you can go find those. She talked a lot about the conditions and how there were also little to no access to libraries, thus making the literacy extremely low. So when she then was in the prison, she created very effective environments for productive literacy development, which was also really cool. So pretty much anywhere Kate Richards O'Hare went, she was writing, informing, and helping with progressive change. Kate Richards O'Hare was born in 1876 and passed away in 1948, leaving a legacy of 71 years of effective strategy to organize for the better moral resistance of the American people. Today, her words still speak to the value of standing up for what's right, even when the cost is high. And we can see that today. Thank you very much. And I hope that you learned a little bit more about Kate Richards O'Hare. Thank you.